I'm running for city limits over here in the 17th district. I'm with my buddy Joe Liptak. We're a two-man team. We're campaigning against everybody. We're asking everybody to surrender. How about it, Joe?
Yeah, you better believe it.
The government is very powerful, and if you're targeted by powerful branches of the government in America, you suffer. A lot of people don't want to believe that. They don't believe that until their life and their freedom is in jeopardy. I could have had a pardon. All I had to do was ask for it and say that I was guilty of the crimes that they convicted me of. And I told them to shove it up their ass. Excuse my mouth.
Credit for that. That's all right.
You keep your pardon. I wasn't guilty. And now, keep this in mind. No physical evidence against Jim Traficant. I want to say this to you.
Oh, I read both of those books.
For the learned person that's listening to this, being the #1 target of the Justice Department and the IRS since 1983, he came out of trial, a 6-year investigation of me. $15 million to the taxpayers. That's what it cost them. Over 250 federal agents following me around. All the time that our World Trade Center and Pentagon were being attacked, they were following Jim Traficant. They voluntarily admitted at trial that they made no tapes, audio or video, on Jim Traficant. Now, if you believe that, then I've got some swampland in Florida. And the reason is very simple. It's like a former Secret Service guy, Mike Robertson, said. Traficant committed no crimes. And he could have used all their boxes of tapes against them. They're all exculpatory. And that's where it is. And now it's coming out to pass, where several people admitted they were pressured to lie. Several admitted to others confidentially that they lied. The government wouldn't allow their testimony. Now a juror is very upset because he wasn't able to hear the testimony of those people. So here you have a man that was convicted, if I were guilty of those crimes, with no evidence.
Well, how about the FBI?
Unbelievable. Well, I wasn't locked out politically. I was put in prison. They couldn't have beaten me with a gun. Now they redistricted here. I have no money to keep me off the ballot with a funny count. There's only 7 weeks left with no campaign fund. So they did a pretty good job on me. And we've got a corrupt system. I was the #1 target in the country, the Justice Department, the Internal Revenue Service, and American Israeli Public Affairs Committee. I brought home John Demjanjuk from Israel. I proved he was innocent, and they've hated me ever since. And they finally put me in prison. They have a stranglehold on it. I said that on the Greta Van Susteren show when I got out. I was probably the hottest interview in the country. But when I made that statement, you didn't see me on TV no more.
I believe that Israel has a powerful stranglehold on the American government. They control both members of the House and the Senate. They have us involved in wars of which we have little or no interest. Our children are coming back in body bags. Our nation is bankrupt over these wars. And if you open your mouth, you get targeted. And if they don't beat you at the poll, they'll put you in prison.
All right, explain to me what you see as, why you target or why you have a grudge against the Israelis.
The grudge is not necessarily a grudge. It's an objective assessment that no one will have the courage to speak about. They're controlling much of our foreign policy. They're influencing much of our domestic policy. Wolfowitz, as Undersecretary of Defense, manipulated President Bush #2 back into Iraq. They pushed definitely to try and get Bush before he left to move into Iran. We're conducting an expansionist policy of Israel, and everybody's afraid to say it. They control much of the media, they control much of the commerce of the country, and they control powerfully both bodies of the Congress. They own the Congress.
Are you an anti-Semite?
No, I'm not. That's exactly what they're going to say, and I expect that. What I am is an American. And you see, I think America comes first, and we have a one-sided foreign policy in the Mideast.
But when I made that statement, you didn't see me on TV no more. Now, let's just think about how powerful they are. Look at all the talk show hosts. Some are very conservative, some are very liberal. They're diametrically opposed on every issue, but they all sing out of the same hymn book on Israel because they control our government. They control our media. They control the finances of this country. And I'm not anti-Semite. I'm not against Israel. I think Israel, in their aggressiveness, is going to end up hurting their country in the long run. But America has gone too far now. We haven't been objective in the Mideast. We've invited and we have in fact imported terrorism to our shores over our policies.
This whole apparatus to push this notion that 9/11 was Al-Qaeda.
I really don't want to get into all that except to say this. The more I read about it, the more troubled I am. On or about the time that 9/11 occurred, I was beginning to get a lot of information about 9/11. The next thing you know, I was indicted and hauled away. But there's some real questions I have on building number 7. There's some real questions I have on building number 7. Some real question I have on the volatility of jet fuel and being able to cause such structural damage to such steel girders. And I just have some real doubts. And from my people will say, Jim, you're just so negative about the government that you're always looking for the dark side of it. And really, I'm not. But there's some real troubling questions about 9/11. So as an old sheriff, I always looked at an incident from one angle. Who benefits? And I'll tell you something, I don't like what I see, and I'm reluctant to even say what I see because I've been branded so damn bad, I'm like a Texas steer. Look, the first 2 spies we had moved America to re-attack Iraq. The last 2 spies that were just released by the Obama administration literally just turned loose from prison saying, yes, they spied, but they don't think their intentions were bad. They were manipulating America to attack Iran. Now look, Israel's used us like a whore over there. And the Arab people over there hate America. It's just a matter of time till our policies started to import these tragedies. How could they fight? They're like the old Indians.
Well, that assumes they did it, though.
Let's say this. I'm not assuming anything. Let's say this. How could the Indians fight cannon and repeating rifles with bows and arrows? So they had to become terrorists.
That's assuming they did.
Kill you in your street, kill you in your sleep, attack you, surprise you, ambush you.
You don't still think that, though, do you?
The Vietnamese and the Japanese would have come over here and done the same thing.
Hear me, though. Hear me. These nations that are bitter against America, they have no military might. They have only one way to fight. And the only way they have to fight would be through terrorist acts. But I think some of these terrorist acts might just be perpetrated by other people who want to see America then retaliate against the so-called terrorists. So I have my doubts about this whole thing. I always look to see who benefits. And I have one thing, Israel has certainly benefited over there. Now, what's next? Lebanon's whacked. Iraq is whacked. Afghanistan, we got our guys dying now in Iraq. And Afghanistan, they're coming back in body bags. What's next? Iran? Syria? Is there going to be anything left? Egypt over there singing out of the same book as Israel because they're scared to death. But if you're a Palestinian throwing rocks across that Gaza Strip and West Bank, how do they fight those machine guns and automatic rocket launchers that the Israelis have? I was there when Wellstone was there, yeah. Wellstone had a courage about him, and he wasn't afraid to speak out, and I admired him for that.
Use of force right now, which is what the resolution before us calls for. In the midst,
you got to be very careful. The government is very powerful, and if you're targeted by powerful branches of the government in America, you suffer.
Could be a very costly mistake for our country.
A lot of people don't want to believe that. They don't believe that until their life and their freedom is in jeopardy. It's just the policies have gone wrong. It says the Congress shall coin the money. We don't. We have an independent entity. International bankers control our money. Let's tell it the way it is, with powerful hands that reach in on it, number one. Number two, we have a trade policy. The Constitution is clear. Congress shall regulate commerce with foreign nations. Regulate absolutely means that the different variables of economic activity have to be quantified and adjusted to provide us with an opportunity. Right now, we have a $750 billion trade deficit. Forget the budget deficits. there was no mightier nation, hear me, than the Soviet Union in one regard. That was a dictatorship, totalitarian. That KGB and that government, you'd come up missing if you opened your mouth. But when that economy got so bad, the opposition was like the wind, and you can't stop the wind. And Soviet Union fell apart. Don't think that cannot happen over here. You're going to see states that are going to start saying, we're tired of sending our money to Washington, D.C. I'm coming out with a book. My book is called America's Last Minute Man. I was known for my little statements on the House floor.
That 1 minute speech.
And I projected a depression to turn of the century. And it lasted a little longer because the Clinton administration was very lucky. You had the computer internet explosion, and everybody's buying a new computer every 30 days. And it's sort of like the old Barbie doll effect with Mattel Incorporated. It just kept generating and generating. Then it ran out. Now everybody got a computer. Everybody's got a television. And it's bottomed out. And that television is being made in Indonesia. And most of these other products are being made in China. In the country, we become a colony again. We export raw materials and we import finished products. And America is in trouble. America is bankrupt. And my speech on the House floor in March of '93 states exactly why. You're on our own little cell phone. This is the Jimmy T and the Joey L cell phone. How you doing?
Not as good as you.
Hello, American Bandstand. They all sing out of the same hymn book on Israel because they control our government. They control our media. They control the finances of this country. And I'm not anti-Semite. I'm not against Israel. I think Israel, in their aggressiveness, is going to end up hurting their country in the long run. But America has gone too far now. We haven't been objective in the Mideast.